Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever episode of LeadHers in Tech. This is a brand new podcast that is celebrating the inspiring stories and insights of female leaders in the world of tech. I'm Emily Parker, for any of you who don't know me, and I'm really excited to be bringing you some very influential and successful female leaders. Today, I am so excited to introduce a remarkable leader and entrepreneur who is making some significant impacts in the world of software sales. So we have with us today Ana Nedava, who is the founder of the Young Women in Sales Club, an empowering community that is dedicated to nurturing the next generation of female sales leaders. Anna's got a really rich background in tech sales and is an influential startup advisor. And so her insights today are going to be really inspiring for us. Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. Firstly, maybe just to kick off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey so far in tech sales?
Sure. And what an introduction. Thank you, Emily. I have to live up to those expectations. Well, let's see how my advice will be useful. So from, my background, I'm from Ukraine originally. I've lived in London for the past 14 years or so. And my background is predominantly in sales. I've been an AE, I've been an enterprise AE, I've been head of sales, VP of sales, running different size teams across the globe. And I've also been an entrepreneur before. I've started my own tech software company. And now, as you said, I'm embarking on this new journey, doing this new venture for young women in sales, and can't be more excited.
Yeah, brilliant. So I guess what's interesting for me is what initially drew you to the field of tech sales?
I mean, I wish I had some kind of amazing story that I knew that I wanted to do that for my whole life. What actually happened? I went to Imperial College. I was doing my master's, and then BMC came to the career fair, which I actually missed. And then my
Right.
friend, who was in the same study group, he came back and he said, "You know what? I think that role may be perfect for you, so you should go and speak to those guys." And I looked at it and I was like, I have no idea what an account manager is and what they do,
Yeah.
but I'm going to give it a go and apply. And I did, and went through this rigorous process to join BMC's postgraduate program. The whole interview process took probably 6 or 7 months. And
Wow.
then because they had, like, lots of postgrads, 500 plus candidates, and they only chose 8. So I think I got lucky to get into the program. And interestingly, during the interview, they asked us to write an essay, like, what do you think an account manager does? And
Hmm.
I had to Google it. I was like, I have no idea. So that's, guess a little bit of fate
I bet
happened
it'd be
there.
very interesting to read that essay again now.
I know, I should dig it out. Yes, it's
Yeah.
somewhere.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So obviously you've come in through that graduate scheme, and since then transitioned through almost all of the sales side roles of tech. How do you manage going through those transitions, and what advice would you maybe give to people who are listening who are stepping in from IC into leadership or just shifting the responsibilities of their role?
Yeah. Well, I think, like, before you get into leadership, there are many kind of steps you need to go through. Some people start at the SDR level. I didn't start as a pure SDR, but I
Mm,
started as an AE without any SDR support, so I had to be an
right.
SDR myself. And advice wise, if you want to progress from being an SDR to being an AE, focus on bringing good stuff in. Build a reputation that whatever you bring to the table for your AEs is good, is quality, it's going to close, you know, is well qualified. And that's connected to your commission, obviously, but also it's connected to your promotion, because if you're doing a good job for others, you're going to doing a good job for yourself. And then if we're talking about going into leadership, I leadership is not necessarily about a title. And I know it sounds like a cliche and whatever, but when when you are an AE and you are mentoring an SDR, you are taking on some projects to help your VP or help your CRO to put certain processes in place. You're driving certain changes. All of those are helping your team, like running trainings, whatever. All of those things are putting you on the path to leadership. There's a concept of a Peter's principle, right? Where people get promoted and they shouldn't have been promoted to that level
Mm,
because they could have been an amazing AE. They're a
yeah.
rubbish leader because it's not
Yeah.
for everyone. So you've got to feel it and you've got to want to do all of those things now without waiting for someone to give you a certain title.
Yeah. It's a completely different skill set. And what you've just suggested there is you start to do some of the activities, you can test out to a certain extent whether you enjoy them
Yeah.
and whether you're suited to those activities. But it's almost a little bit like doing the job before you get the job
Yeah.
to prove yourself. You mentioned about doing things for the company that are outside your job role, everybody else seeing your leadership potential or seeing your potential for that next role. What are your thoughts on internal perception? I think how you're viewed by your colleagues or your superiors is hugely important, arguably sometimes more important than, core performance numbers.
That's extremely important, more important than doing your number. I know quite a lot of amazing sales leaders who are not necessarily the best individual contributors. And that's absolutely fine. As you rightly said, it's a different skill set. So people need to see you as someone. If there is a vacancy, if an opportunity opens up, you would be the first one in the line. They're not going to look outside; they're going to look inside because they know someone who's coming up to potentially take that role.
Yeah.
And if you want that role, it's worth starting conversations with your manager saying that I would be interested and I would like to do some certain projects for the team which support me and help me get developed into a leader.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
internal perception is important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. So let's go on to maybe some more of your decisions and the most recent
Oh,
shift career wise. So you put a post out there about you reflecting on your decision to leave Ably, and that post got a brilliant amount of traction. There was so much vulnerability in what you wrote, and also just inspiring about why you're starting your new venture. But I'm keen to understand what were some of your experiences from reflecting on that decision, and how did you know it was time to make the move and make the shift?
yeah. So mm, I've I've kind of always had a flair for all things entrepreneurial, starting your own business and stuff like that. If you look at my Wix or Squarespace account, you will see
Yeah.
a lot of ideation websites. Luckily, the majority of them didn't come through. So I've
Right.
always, I've always kind of thought about that, and was coming up with different ideas. So kind of venturing into my own thing is not new for me. I've done, as I said, my own software electric business before Ably, but I think it was different because in this situation, it's a new area for me. I'm not founding a company. I'm not founding a tech product. The capital investment is not comparable to what I had to put in with my previous thing,
Yeah.
but it's very much people oriented. So interestingly, like my whole experience has been B2B, and now this feels like B2C because I
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to deal with public, right? So I've
Yeah.
had so many signups, and I reached out to every single one of them, and welcomed them to the club and had a chat, and it is quite taxing.
Yeah. You're used to dealing with a certain number of deals, especially when you're in the enterprise space. It's not really that many deals. And even though you might have quite a large buying committee on that deal, it's nowhere near as many as you'll be dealing with
Yeah.
now. How many signups roughly are you around at the moment?
About 350 now.
Wow, that's a lot of people to reach out to individually.
Well,
So
yeah, and I haven't started PGing yet.
Wow,
This all
wow,
has
wow.
been organic from the post you just mentioned,
That's incredible.
some other things. Yeah. I've got quite a lot of people, and if you are watching this, you should go and sign up, my friends,
Mhm.
and I'm going to reach out to you.
Nice. So let's go into it a little bit more then. So what is the core mission of the Young Women in Sales Club, and what made you want to start it?
So I know it sounds cliche, but I really want to help and I want to give back. And I think there is a huge gap in the market because I genuinely believe there is no place that caters to the unique requirements of young women who are just starting their career. And my sister is in sales, my little sister, shall I say, and she started as an SDR, and now she's got promoted to commercial lead. And I'm extremely proud of her. She's talented, she's smart, she's hardworking, and sometimes she's a pain in the ass, really, because she calls me, every day asking for advice and, can you check my deck? Can you check my email? What do you think I should tell to this champion, etc., etc.
Yes.
And I love that she has a person, she has a space to call and ask stupid questions. Not all of them are stupid, obviously, but she feels safe to ask questions that she thinks may be stupid, but
Right. Yeah.
they are not stupid. And I know that not many people, not everyone has this opportunity. And
Yeah.
naturally, we would go to our manager. But again, do you really want to sound ridiculous in front of your manager?
But what you mentioned just then is, even if it's not a stupid question, if you feel like it is, then that brings with it some level of nervousness about asking people who are in a position of power at your company.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, it takes time and effort to develop that kind of relationship with your manager. So, what are you going to do before you've done that? And what happens if you haven't done it? Which is, by the way, it's okay. You don't have to be best friends with your manager or with every manager you have. And so that's kind of the first reason, right? The second reason is that there are quite a lot of societies, clubs that are catering to a mixed audience. So you go to an event and there are, CROs, VPs, and the topics, because the audience is so wide, there's no like clear ICP. The content is mixed as well. And it could be intimidating, plus the content is mixed, and some young women just don't join. And on the sign up form, I've got a question that says, like, what piques your interest? And would you believe that about 30% of women said exactly that? Like, I was, bizarre. I
Yeah.
was really, really surprised. So, oh, and then one more thing about, why I started the club. When I was at Able, we were growing really fast. And I got promoted to be a global head of sales, and I had to hire lots and lots of AEs. Like, I had a headcount for like 25, I think, AEs globally to hire within like 2 months, which was crazy.
Yeah.
And I barely had any women in my pipeline. Like, what the
Mm,
actual fuck?
I
Seriously.
know. Yeah.
It was ridiculous. We had great tech, we had great culture, we had great pay, like really
Yeah.
the best pay in the
Yeah.
market, and I just wasn't getting any women in the pipeline. So I hope with the club, I'll have an opportunity to entice more women to go into sales and stay in sales, not like move
Yeah.
into other roles that maybe more supported.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
It's interesting because I'm going through a period of hiring at the moment, and I'm having the same issue. I really want to have a diverse team, but if a diverse pool isn't available, it's very hard to do that. And I've been really struggling to get female interviewees in front of me. There's only so much you can do as a leader who wants to empower more women in the short term, other than sort of showcasing how our company supports women and getting our name out there in places. And I think what you're doing is really good for the long term of, in general, giving women the confidence and feeling accepted in the community.
yeah,
Like there's a space for them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also, part of it is about recruitment as well. And working and I'm planning to work with, some exceptional companies who are hiring to put it in front of the club members. Because if you look at the statistics, when you call a guy and suggest to have a conversation about a new job, the majority of them say yes.
Right.
When you call a woman, they feel that unless they are like properly unhappy in their job, they feel it's disloyal, they feel they're betraying their company, their manager, whatever. Whilst I
Mm,
would say, go and take that call, go and listen to what they have to offer. You don't have to leave, but you know your worth in the
yeah.
market, you know what's out there. And also you're kind of building a relationship to use when the time is right.
Yeah. That's a good
So
mentality to think of it as.
yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said as well for how it makes you feel to go through a recruitment process, even if you don't decide to take the job, almost as a way to reflect on what you're capable of.
Yeah, there is a downside to that as well. And uh, when you when you are not like superbly happy in your existing role, and then you go
Mm,
and you interview, and then you meet some people who are not exactly inspiring, and then you get some bad feedback or rejection, and that can
yeah.
really hit your confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say you are that person, you're not happy in your current role, and you go out there and you start to have some interview processes because you're thinking about moving on
Yeah.
and things are not going well. What are you saying to that young woman who's asking you for your advice? How do they overcome that challenge? How do they make themselves not feel disheartened by it
Yeah.
and keep going?
I think it's important not to keep that inside. If you feel like that, like if you don't feel confident, you need support, and don't be afraid to ask your friends, your colleagues who you can share that you're thinking of leaving, your
Yeah.
work wife.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid sharing how you feel, because you will be amazed with the response,
Mm,
and that will give you a little boost. Like all of us need external validation from time to time. Internal confidence, internal validation is the strongest one. But by having external validation, you can kind of ignite the fire that you have inside. And also, when you do receive that feedback or rejection or whatever, I think it's important to clearly separate the emotion from the fact and learn from the facts. What can I do better in the next one? Was it my fault? Like, didn't I come across well? Wasn't I prepared? Or is it just a mismatch of culture or approach or whatever?
mm,
And learn from that and use it in the next interview. I remember, so when I exited Electa, I took some time off because like I really needed time off.
yeah.
And then I was like, I don't know, I don't want to start anything new of my own, at least yet. I've still got like scars and bleeding and stuff, but I want to do something. I'm just getting bored. So I started
Mm,
searching for a job, and I've never been in a situation before where I was searching for a job and I didn't have a job. So that was a
right.
new, interesting experience. And plus, at that point, for the past 3 years, I've been a CEO and a founder, and I had people reporting to me. So it was a switch in a kind of mindset. I started interviewing. I haven't interviewed for years and years and years. And the first couple of interviews were just atrocious. And I've just been on the hiring side, right? Like
Yeah.
I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly, and I was like making mistakes and saying stupid things, and I was like, all right, okay, I need to take a step back and think what I'm actually saying.
That's so interesting because I think sometimes people look up to people so much who are in CEO or founder positions and they think you can do absolutely anything and walk into any room and get an opportunity. But it's nice to know that practice does still make perfect in some of those
Yeah,
situations. And if you're out of the game, you're out of the people say, if you don't make a cold call for X amount of time,
yeah,
like you can't do it anymore. And
yeah,
absolutely, it's a skill you've got to practice at
yeah.
and keep up with. Yeah.
100%. So like the more of like if you're searching for a job properly, do as many interviews as possible to practice. at least.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I got into sales is because I went to an assessment center for a practice, because like the two people who I lived with at university said, we're going to this assessment center run by Pareto law, if you know them,
Yeah.
and you should come along because it's a whole day of intense, basically interview practice. I said, but I don't want a job in sales. And they said, come along, come along, come along. Anyway, the rest is history. Here we are.
Yeah. And by
um,
the way, on that note, like you fell into sales, right? I fell into sales. Um, Surely there must be a better process. Like when I was doing my master's at Imperial, I had a class on innovation, on management, on finance, on
mm,
accounting, on everything but sales. How
yeah,
crazy is that?
yeah,
Like
that's so
that's
true.
that's the main thing. I mean, I'm sorry, everyone else. Unless your business is making money, you don't have a business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a management and entrepreneurship degree, and we had loads of sessions on the different careers that are available, and not one of those was sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The typical route for us was KPMG, Deloitte, investment banks. Like
Yeah.
I went to interview with Nomura when I was what, 20 something, 20, 21. And it was a crazy interview because all they wanted to know is what's the shortcut in Excel to go from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. And I was like, I don't know.
And the thing is, that's probably all you would have been doing for the first year to finish. And it's those shortcuts.
I think I got lucky that I didn't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. At my university, I did a placement year in my third year, and the big four came in to interview us on campus. And I remember that it was like, if you can get a job at EY or you can get a placement at Deloitte, then you're the cream of the crop. You're the best in our year. And the psychometric tests, they ruined me every time. That I was not good at those. And one of my friends went for a placement at one of those companies. And when I was asking, like checking in, how's things going, he said to me that my job is I manage one spreadsheet. All year, he just managed one spreadsheet. I'm sure it was a big spreadsheet. Yeah.
With many tabs.
That was for many tabs, but that was a hugely different experience than what I had on placement, which was a very small company, less than 10 people, selling management training services. And it was like every day for 2 hours, every member of the company got on the phone, even the CFO.
Yeah.
And, we tried to cold outbound because that's the only way that we could get business. They didn't even have a sales team. It was just everyone is a sales team.
Yeah.
So yeah, hugely different experience.
Yeah. And then also the pay comes in play here.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how much they earn now, but then when we just graduated, obviously everyone was sharing experiences like,
Yeah.
what's your salary? What's your salary? And mine was definitely the top one there
Yeah.
because it's sales.
Yeah. But I don't know whether people necessarily know that. I don't think I knew that the difference that I was going to get in comparison to my counterparts who didn't go into sales until I was already in it.
Yeah.
We should advertise that more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So coming back to maybe the young women who are just starting out their sales careers, say they've already fallen into it, what kind of opportunities will joining up to the club provide? Because we've spoken about quite a few different things already today about, having it as a place to get support from people, get advice, community, but also potentially finding companies that are supporting women and are great companies to work at for women. But I think there's a lot more from what we've spoken about outside of this that people can expect. So I'd love to hear some of that.
Yeah. So there are three kind of key pillars, shall I say, of the club. And the first one is about learning, not necessarily structured learning, but like learning in your own time. So that's, articles about different topics, got categories like sales engagement, soft skills, mental strength. So whatever you feel today, you can go and find something and educate yourself and hopefully help yourself. So that would be articles, videos, masterclasses, and workshops, and those to be both online and offline, face to face.
Yeah.
Then the second pillar is events. So networking events, panels, discussions, and I want the members to participate in them as much as possible. I want the members
Yeah.
to write content for the club as well, because
Mm,
if you've just been promoted to a commercial account executive from an SDR role, I mean, who is better to write about that experience than you? And the SDRs would love to read about someone like how did it happen, what's the experience, what does it feel like to be a CE after being an SDR? So, I want the members to contribute as much as possible. And then the third part is around finding a mentor and being a mentor. And I know there's kind of a preconception that your mentor has to be, several steps ahead of you, someone senior, someone who's seen it all and done it all. And
mm,
I think you can have many mentors, and you need to find a mentor you need today. So if you want to get promoted to become an enterprise AE in, 4 years time, well, get mentored by an enterprise AE, learn from them,
yeah.
learn what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. And, that will help you rather than being mentored by, I don't know, a CRO for
Yeah.
multinational business.
Yeah. Because actually that CRO may have been an enterprise at some point in their life, but I bet the role was very different. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also I think they are giving you their perspective of what they would expect from an enterprisee now, which is fine. Like, it's a great perspective because ultimately they are the ones who are promoting you. But
Yeah.
if you are getting a perspective of the actual enterprise AE now, they will give you a lot of different things. It's like I'm advising some companies now, and I have access to both the C-suite and the people on the ground. And not always those two things managed.
Okay. Would you say that you've seen any kind of trend on what the most common polar opposite is?
Well, yeah, I think the processes is probably like what's happening in detail in the business. So, I talk to the C-suite and it's like, oh yeah, well, this is our process, this is our conversion rate. People respond like this to these questions, and then I go and speak to SDRs and E's. I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the other one is on the forecast as well.
Oh, the forecast.
The
We
forecast
know the forecast is the most important meeting of the
is of the
week
week.
or the highest pressure meeting of the week
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, C-suite, the head of sales that would be saying, oh, yeah, like, well, this deal is looking really good. We're focused, like it's in commit, etc., etc. And then he was like, we haven't talked to them for 3 months
Wow. And it's in commit.
and it's in commit.
Oh,
Like, right.
golly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting actually because I sit in on a lot of forecast calls where I'm representing what's happening in the SDR section of the business, but I'm seeing interaction between the sales leadership and the sales reps, and then hearing on the ground also sometimes what the AEs are saying afterwards. And that's been the case for the last however many years in all companies I've worked at. And it is interesting to hear people say, I think this deal's going to come in, by the way, but I'm not putting it into commit because then the sales leadership will ask me about it.
Yeah.
And the opposite way around, which is I don't think it should be commit. I don't think it should be this queue, but they asked me to move the close date up and try and push it through, but I don't think it'll close.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons on both ends why I guess maybe it doesn't match up and that transparency isn't always there.
What I've seen from my own experience, that happens when there is no structured process on how you should forecast. So if you are applying medic to your forecast, for
Mhm.
example, then it's quite binary. You either have it or you don't have it. So I've just been building like a forecast matrix for one of the startups I'm advising to. And unless they have certain things at certain stage, they can't move things in or out.
Amazing.
That's it. There's no
Yeah.
argument there. If you don't know the pain and you don't have a champion, you can't even put it into stretch, commits or upsides or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um,
That's interesting because I know a lot of companies are adopting Medic. You mentioned about training and there being some access to information, learnings, articles, those kind of things. I love the fact that you want to get people who are members of the club to be contributing to the content. I think that's so refreshing because I guess people look to other people for expertise, but actually teaching yourself, you learn a lot more. Only when you become the person who's teaching do you actually retain,
Yeah.
let's say, 80% of the information. So I think that's a really good opportunity for people. How are you kind of building that into the launch of the
Yeah.
club?
So I have reached out to several people, including you, as you know,
Yeah.
to kind of help kickstart the first batch of
Yeah.
the content. So like when we launch the club, I want people to have something already in. It doesn't need to be like huge, maybe 30, 40 pieces of content across different categories. And then I have a content plan where, we'll be releasing maybe like one article a week, video bi-weekly, et cetera, et cetera. So on the website, there is an opportunity for anyone to submit their content. And by the way, that could be anything. That could be like a kick-ass presentation you've done that helped you close a deal. I am also going to be reaching out to the members, asking whether they would be interested to contribute.
What are your thoughts on, reaching out to people and encouraging them to provide some content to the club, but actually they might be facing some imposter syndrome and wondering, I've not done content before. I might not feel comfortable and confident sharing that out. How can you encourage that and overcome that potential, fear that they might have? Because I think some of the people who have been fearful of putting themselves out there are the ones who've got the most to share, actually.
Oh, that's a very good question. I've tried, look, apart from reaching out to people on LinkedIn and chatting to them, I've tried to also like book mini calls with, different members. I'm going through that list,
Yeah.
taking time, but that helps me get to know the people. And when I get to know them, I see what kind of thing they can bring, from the experience point of view to the table, to the content. And I'm always impressed with things people have done. I know how difficult it is. And if you've made it to a certain point, even if you've made it to, a fairly early stage point, it's still worth talking about. So I've always encouraged my team through a carrot, not a stick.
Yeah.
And I think I will be, and I am encouraging members through praise and recognition and, trying to boost that confidence, because I do genuinely believe that each and every one of us has something to share and people will listen, because there are so many other people behind you, like one step behind you, who would benefit from what you have to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And if they, absolutely adamant that they don't want their name on it, they can share it anonymously. And when they see great feedback to that piece of content, we can
Mm.
post their name.
Yeah, that's a good stepping stone as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let them see the value that they're providing and then say, hey, I'd love everybody to know that that was me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Anna, thank you so much. Again, you've shared some really great insights today. And I'm excited for our listeners to be able to hear what you had to say. And for anybody who is listening and loves the sound of the Young Women in Sales Club, we'll be sharing links to how to sign up in show notes and also on LinkedIn. But before we wrap it up, I have one final question that we're going to be asking all guests on the podcast. And that is just, what is the best advice that you have received from a leader in tech?
Okay. So we've talked a lot today about the kind of entrepreneurial journey and making a change from being a sales to being an entrepreneur, and then kind of going back as well. So I guess I'll share an advice I've been given for people who are thinking of starting their own business. I hear that quite a lot when people say, "Oh, I want to start my own business." And my next question is like, "Oh, what's the idea?" And quite a few of them say, oh, I don't know, I don't have an idea, I just want to be an entrepreneur. And a piece of advice I've had in the past is that you have to have lived through the pain and grief of experiencing an issue
Mm,
for it to then become a business idea. Um, it shouldn't be like, oh, I'll sit at home and I think what kind of ideas I can come up with. It has to come out of kind of your inside struggles. I'm sure as an SDR leader, you have those things, you see those processes that are not working and you think, okay, well, I'm not the only one having those problems and I'm an
yeah,
expert and I know how to solve it. This is where the best ideas are born because not only you know all the minute details of the pain, you also have the passion for the topic and you're an
yeah.
expert, which makes you way more investable if you ever want to raise money. So that's a great piece of advice I've been given.
Yeah, that's definitely encouraging people to get out there and live in the world that they want to sell into one day.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
Brilliant. Okay. All right then. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been really good to have you on. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this being posted.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very excited to be the first guest on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.